Welcome back to Ghosts of the Coast, starring Rattlesnake Dre, Kyle Crosby of Louisiana Dread, and Blake Tauzin, featuring special guests from the Dank Swamp Rebellion, Tyler Blanchard.
Action.
Scope.
We have a friend of ours in the studio today. His name is Tyler Blanchard.
Hello. Hi. Hello. Hi, Andre.
He's helped me out with this little journey that we're on. Right, Blake?
Yep, we're talking ghost stories. Tyler, what's up, man?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. This is nice. I feel like the tables have turned, and these tables are slightly spookier than normal, which is nice because I'm into, like throwing on a sheet and deciding to be translucent and just, like moving spectrally through the waves.
If we only all could do that.
You can. You just gotta. You gotta reach down into that inner plasminoid. That's what they call them. Y'all the experts. What's the phantasms? You reach down and you just kind of like embrace that side of your mind's whole.
We were definitely talking about like once you open that door.
Right, that door.
There's no closing
back.
It's like the Twilight Zone, right? Like right when you open and you enter the Twilight Zone, it's you see that and you don't turn back. There's a part of that spectrum now that's always available, and it's sitting back there in your head, and you know it exists because of the fact that it's an experience you've had, and you wouldn't have just made that up.
And I think a lot of people have had those experiences at least once. Some people just won't admit it, or they'll blow it off as like, oh, I just saw something, or that wasn't real. But I think everyone's had an experience that they just couldn't explain at one time.
I agree, and maybe it didn't register to them as a phenomenon. That just because, like y'all said earlier, like if you're open to it, you kind of are a lot more receptive in how that plays out in your life. So I was always kind of skeptical when it came to, just the fantasy element of ghosts or the haunting stuff. I love the horror side of it, but I never really bought into it until certain experiences that I've had really kind of laid it all out in groundwork for me.
So what's changed your mind, Tyler? What has happened to you?
So I could honestly say there's a handful of times that I could not explain what happened, and there's something that kind of like overtook my normal way of processing information. And these specific experiences kind of really opened me up towards this being possible, and there's a realm beyond what a human consciousness could adapt to or understand, that's just completely outside of what we experience on a day-to-day. So something like this could only be triggered by a real-life event, I would have to imagine, for most people. So for example, I was probably about 10 years old, and Ouija board, of course. Ouija board experience. I'm sure you guys had them. Have y'all played with boards before?
No.
Yeah, I bought one at a garage sale once. Bad idea.
It's I don't blame you for not either. It's very, I guess, like the branding and everything that comes along with the Ouija board. You buy into it and you're hoping something happens, and dude, Parker Brothers puts this thing out right now. But my nanny actually had an original Ouija board from the 70s, and she kept it. And she used to tell me that she would often try to throw it away, but it continued to still exist in her possession. And I always thought, I was like, man, she's just fucking with me, like she's just messing with me. That kind of led me to just being like, that's the superstitious part of it. You know, she's just messing with me. But she told me to do that. Go ahead, throw it away. Okay, sure. So I tossed it in the trash and never thought of it again, and then literally opened up the closet and there it was. So again, still thought she was messing with me. Then I just kind of wrote that off, you know, like that happened, and that's just kind of something that happened at a young childhood, and it is what it is. Because how easy would it that to have been to kind of mess with someone, right, as a kid,
grab
too.
out the garbage,
Yeah, and stick it back in.
She was trying to teach you a lesson.
Yeah, it's like, don't mess with the supernatural, especially if you don't understand it. And that's kind of like what ended up happening much later. So we ended up doing the Ouija board around, I want to say it was around Christmas time, and I was probably like maybe 11, 12 years old. So not that far past when that happened. And it was her friend, their family, me, and maybe like one or two other people. So there was probably about 5 or 6 people there. And it was in the age range of in their 40s, and the other kids were probably a little older than me, so like early teenagers. And they were asking about, you know, like, present yourself, you know, if someone's here, tell me something, you know. And some noise went off in the kitchen and everyone freaked out. So we were like, well, if that's a noise in the kitchen, make something happen in the living room. And then the Christmas tree kind of moved a little bit.
Oh God.
So for me, it was kind of like, really, oh man, this is cool. I'm not freaked out. I'm just like, okay, so we get to control matter through asking questions on this board now. And I didn't realize the gravity of what it was, and I still don't totally buy into it. Could have been one of those kids just kind of being cool. Yeah, with like a umbrella or something. Yeah. Totally understand that's cool, but
as a kid, you're not paying attention to that. You're like, oh my god,
yeah,
what's going on?
This is wild. This is completely beyond what I experienced outside of that, and it made it fantastical. So since then, I kind of like took the Ouija board almost as like a gateway to the spiritual realm, but in a heavily like commoditized version of it, or just like the playful way to do it, the not so serious way to commune, but totally able to do it. Like if you remember those old phones that you'd have as a kid that were clear and see-through, that had the little LEDs in them.
Oh yeah.
It's just
those
like
Nokias?
Yeah, talking to your friend on that is just funny, right? So yeah, there was that experience, and since then, I'd say I was probably in my mid-20s, and I was just coming back from a show, and they were kind of all like in that mood of like trying to like do something dumb, like
conjure.
Yeah, with the Ouija board, and I was like, yeah, man, cool, I like those. So it was like my band members, their girlfriends, and a couple other people that were all just kind of in the same room. And a similar experience happened, but we were asking it questions that were extremely personal towards the person who, like, the people who are guiding the the little window to spell out stuff. And that was super weird because I knew the guy very well that we were asking questions about, and I didn't know this information, but it seemed like something he would not have publicly let other people know. And we said that if something is true, that we will not deny it, you know, like that's something that's going to, that was the conditions,
Right.
You know,
Even if it was super serious,
super real, something embarrassing, you know, something that you necessarily didn't want anyone else to know, but we would accept that as truth and say, hey, look, this is actually real. That's what we conditioned to make happen. And that really got weird, like very quickly, because we ended up doing this in an old house that there was like a house party after the show, and we thought it would be a good idea to do that because of the area we were in. So that kind of threw me pretty hard, and I enjoyed the fact that happened, but I would say I can't take it back now. And now it's almost like okay, that's a real thing. That's something that exists to be able to communicate with beyond
the other side.
Exactly. And I think what kills it for a lot of people is the whole like spirit detectives TV shows,
Right.
Things like that. It's like, I'm thinking of a name, John. My name's John. It's like, yeah, no crap. Like, there's
That's an easy connection.
50 Johns here. And your grandfather's name was John. Yeah, it sure was. I'm a John Jr., the third, and he died, didn't he? Yeah, how'd you know? It's like, come on, man. All right.
It's obvious.
Right. And I think that kind of put that stuff in a bad light, where it's not respected and it's just capitalized. So my big thing with the spiritual realm would be, I was seeing this girl, I would say like mid 2000, probably 2007, 8, something like that. And she was telling me that she was really in tune with the supernatural. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'm into metal. I like weird shit. I like weird stuff. And I like the fact that people are like this, and I like to talk to them because it's, it's not every day.
That was like the phase back then.
Yeah.
Everybody was doing it. Everybody was into it too.
Oh, dude, I had the Jack Skeleton jacket on. I was rocking. I had black fingernails at one point because it looked cool whenever I played guitar. Yeah, I get it. But the part of it that really kind of did it for me was I'd ask her specific questions. I was like, why do you feel that you're so connected like this? And she's like, it's not that I feel it. I know I am. Okay. What is it for you that has you so certain? She's like, well, there's absolutely indisputable evidence of things that happened to me that I can't explain, but I now know what it is and accept it as part of my life. So I asked her, I was like, can you just do it at will, or is it just something that like happens randomly? So she's like, a little bit of both. And I just kind of dropped it because I could tell she was getting uneasy. And at this point, we were kind of a fresh new thing. I wasn't trying to like scare this girl off. She was pretty fine, and I didn't want to mess that up. And really interesting. So I just let it go, and then we kind of kept seeing each other for a little while. So I will never forget this. I was thinking of what she was saying on the way to her house one night, and the way that the road is there was 2 large ditches on both sides of the road until you got to her house. And this is in Bayou Blue. So I'm just driving. I'm listening to probably Minus Bear at the time. And I see something literally like pass in front of my car, like a deep shadow that you could easily mistaken to be some type of wildlife. So I wrote it off. I was like, oh man, it just kind of like it threw your senses back and really wanted to make sure it was focusing on the road because, wow, okay.
Right.
So I was like, all right, that's fine. Little did I know that all that was to grab my attention, because I look on the side of my car on the right side, and I see this thing through the mirror that's like very ominous, but also very inviting, where I couldn't quite put my finger on how to describe in detail what this was, but it was present and you could feel it. And it was outside of my car, like on the side of my car while it's moving.
Yeah.
And this was all about a mile before I get to her house.
Like close to your car?
Yes. like traveling with me.
the car.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
And don't remember getting from that point to her home because I was just like completely overloaded with information, and it was absolutely something present with me. And I was almost scared to get out of my car. Like I wanted to call her and be like, hey, can you come get me? I'm outside.
Right.
So I kind of like, manned up for a second and I was like, okay, it's nothing, this is crazy. So I get to her house, knock on the door, and I get in, and I'm like kind of like shook up, and she's like, what's wrong? And I said, I kind of explained to her what happened, and she's like, oh yeah. I was like, what do you mean, oh yeah? Like, what are you trying to say right
Why
now?
are you blowing this off?
She's like, oh yeah, that happens every time I come home. I was like, are you serious? Because I've never felt or seen or have any vibe of that before in my entire life. And all of a sudden, that's a thing now?
Yeah, like it's just okay.
Because I'm talking to you? And she's like, yeah, I don't really like to bring that up much, especially with people who like relatively new in my life, because it doesn't happen to everyone. I think it's just for someone who is in tune with it, maybe not know it, or just open to that spectrum of spectacle. So I'm like, are you serious? Like, okay, so now I have like friends that are outside of our standard 5 senses.
Friends with everybody.
Yeah. So she's explaining to me, she's like, yeah, I really believe that that's someone guiding you to where we are now. And I see it every time I come home, and it's been like this since I moved here. So I'm just kind of like losing my mind over it. And I'm like, have you ever tried to talk to them? And she's like, well, they talk to me, but I don't try to talk back to them. They just kind of like, I guess like I'm almost a confidant. It's like, wow, that's insane. I was like, well, I'm guessing you never actively tried to pursue something with this. She's like, absolutely not. That's my respect for it, is because it exists, and I'm just a pathway to know that it exists and maybe speak someone's story. So something like what you do, Andre, is really interesting because you're doing a lot of the same things just through a different medium, right? So from there, I was just like so interested in the topic because, I mean, come on, man, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And she did not want to talk about it much. So it was really weird for me to let it go. So I started to get upset about it because I'm very obsessive when it comes to learning new things. I'm very addicted to jumping in something neck deep and just getting lost in it for hours or days and months or years. So I'm talking to her, and I'm just trying to drop hints at, hey, tell me a little more about it subtly. And she eventually gets upset with me and says that this is not going to work because of the way you're acting about it. I was like, well, give me a sign. Like being kind of like a jerk about it, because I was getting emotional and upset. And she looks towards the back of her house, and the door just closes.
No.
Really?
I swear, this happened. I'm not even joking. I would not make this up.
Was it her that did that, or was that like the spirit?
I have no idea. Apparently, she had some type of command over it to where she could do that. I don't know.
It's like some Carrie stuff. Man.
It did not make me feel comfortable at all. And since then, I have not spoken a word to her.
I would be afraid.
Since that night?
Since that time.
I have a question for you. Do you think that you experienced that because you had some type of relationship with her?
No, it's possible. You
or
know,
do you think that just happened because you were in that place?
it's possible that it could be a couple of different things like that. Like maybe she really does have a lot of control over, being so connected to that spiritual realm that she could freak someone out like that and say to them to do something in the natural world.
Maybe she just senses what's about to happen. Like, maybe it's something she's seen before.
It's
and
very
she knows,
possible.
Like,
to this day, I do not travel that road. I'll tell
Jesus.
you that.
The closing of the door. That's
yeah.
because that's not.
That's evident.
Yeah.
That's absolute. Like, I didn't imagine that. That absolutely happened unless she could time specifically when the air condition closes the door, which would be pretty amazing as well.
She didn't have one of those little Nest apps.
Dude, this was like 2007, so not quite yet. But yeah, that was something that really opened my eyes to being to knowing that it exists. And since then, I've spoke with people who are also really in tune with that side. That I don't think I'm naturally, but I'm naturally curious, and that curiosity can sometimes be at a fault where that relationship instantly died because I was making her uncomfortable, and I can't help myself whenever it comes to new things that I'm intrigued with. So it naturally would have never worked out in the first place. And that's, I like to look at things as there's no coincidence behind action. There's absolutely rhyme and reason to the things that are happening around us. And the sooner you realize that it's not because you're in control, it's because of your influence these things are happening, it's a lot easier to live with the things that do happen. And I think that's all stemming back from some of these times where I was able to connect spiritually with something that's outside of my five senses and know that there's something greater than what we could witness as human beings. And there's a lot of connections with that, with like the psychology on like DMT or psychoactive things, right? And I think that's like a parallel, that they really live in the same type of world where the spectacular and the psychotic world of things we can't understand, it's all living right underneath our nose that we can never know about.
It's just if you get the chance to experience it.
Right, or have the avenue to go through that.
Right. That's why I had asked you, like, do you think it was because you had a relationship? Because one of the only times that I've ever seen a full, like, spectrum or whatever, I was driving my car not far from my house, and me and my wife were going home. I saw something float across my car. It was not a cloud of smoke. It was not a mist.
It's very specific.
Yeah, something was moving that wasn't a full figure.
Mm-hmm.
And I tapped my brakes out of instinct. And my wife immediately looked at me and said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" Because she's very, like,
she's in
receptive.
tuned as well.
Her mom, and her sister, all of them. And a couple things that she's brought up and told me just, like, blew my mind because, like you said, some people shouldn't know these certain things, yet it comes up. There's no coincidence. You can't just bring up a random fact, and the only reason why I think I experienced it that day was because I was holding my wife's hand.
Yeah, there's some type of connection there that allows that medium to pass through.
Right.
Literally.
And when I'm by myself, sometimes I'm in these fields. I might have a weird feeling, but I never physically see anything. Or I'm never physically touched. But that one time while I was holding her hand, whatever passed in front of my vehicle was witness enough for me to physically touch my brakes because I thought I was going to hit something or somebody.
Right.
And then she immediately looked at me and knew, like, I know I saw that, but you shouldn't have saw that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's people in our lives that may not know they're so in tune with it because they reject that piece of their life away because either, like, fear is a very crazy thing that could come over a person. So as soon as, like, something that you fear is instantly injected into your life, you adapt to it in a way that more than likely you just completely reject that or deal with it. And unfortunately, most people, well, I can't say most people, but there are the people who just completely reject it. And it's
block it out.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like there's more often than not people that come into my life that are, in tune with that side of it. Like my mom's actually really, really interestingly connected with that side. And I've had a really good friend that was also like in a different way connected with it. We would be driving down the Grand Bois, and I'm sure you've heard stories about the Grand Bois and what happened on that.
I knew it was haunted. I'd never heard any stories.
There's a lot of things that happen on the Grand Bois that probably don't need to be surfaced, that, in my opinion, stay on the Grand Bois. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the Bourg-Larose highway. Long stretch of road that has very little lighting throughout the whole road.
It's very windy and dark, too.
And there's tons of wildlife that cross that road, especially during a full moon. That, like 20 miles? About something like that?
Something. It's pretty long.
Yeah, it's not a short road, and it's a very eerie drive in no matter what condition you're in. Even in the middle of the day, because the trees arch over the road itself, and there's a lot of swamp area between both sides. So we were driving this one night, and we were coming back from a gig, and she's like, "Hey, look on the side of the road. You saw that?" I was like, "No, what? What'd you see? Like an alligator or something?" And she looks to me and she says, "You didn't see those two kids?" It's like, we should turn around if there's two kids on the side of the road. Right. She's like, "No, they wouldn't get in." I tried.
Thanks for listening to Ghosts of the Coast, a DSR production.